Hello and welcome. My name is Carol Carter and I'm the founder and CEO of GlobalMindED. For those of you who aren't familiar, GlobalMindED is all about creating a capable, diverse talent pipeline to get more women, people of color, LGBTQ, rural, first gen to college, any way you can define diverse populations into the education, economic mobility, employment, and leadership pipelines. So we're delighted to be here today with Jessica Artiles and her incredible panel that will be able to really look at a lot of issues that have to do with first gen to college and how we can help more people who are first gen to college be successful at places like MIT and any other type of higher education institution. So I want to also share that this week, actually today would have been the second day of our live conference in Denver. And there are a number of different ways that GlobalMindED achieves its goals. One of them is through the annual event where we usually have, 12 to 1,500 people a year. The silver lining of this event being virtual this year is we've had up to 5,000 attendees either watch our YouTube channel or be with us live as you all are today. So if you want to share this, we welcome you to do that, but we also would like to invite you to several other of our quote main stage sessions this week, where we look at many of the equity issues that are roiling the United States right now, many of the Black Lives Matters issues, and several other that are COVID related and also employment and job loss related. So we see all of these things as intertwined, and we have a lot of people who are experts and asking critical questions for accountability at systems levels. So without further ado, I want to introduce Jessica Artiles, and she knows it well. Design is power is her motto. As the founder and the chief design officer of DARTE Design, part studio, part consultancy, she coaches and co-creates with businesses and individual trailblazers to apply design-based approaches to their challenges, be it in their personal or professional lives. By applying the design thinking process to product, workforce, and leadership development, her clients' outcomes are more creative, resource efficient, and joyful. As a side exploration into community, co-discovery, Jessica and her now husband co-founded the second L and launched Epoca, the first residential self-fulfillment festival as an experimental wedding format a day before the world shut down for COVID-19. That was really good timing. I just got to put that in. Jessica believes everyone is born thinking like a designer. She just helps you shake off the dust and stretch back into it. During her master's thesis at MIT, she invented design shops, a process to shorten the time by which someone begins to think and problem solve like a designer. Combined with her certification as a Reiki apprentice healer, she can challenge her clients to incorporate a balanced, holistic approach to the ancient human experience of creativity and solving problems. Jessica was named one of Boston's Latino 30 under 30 in recognition as a most influential leader. She serves on the board of directors to MIT Global Co-Creation Lab as queen and in-house design strategist at Rise On, and is a fellow for the Royal Society of Art. She lives with her husband as graduate resident advisors in the world's greatest playground, MIT, running experiments with her students in residential-based learning, culture, and community mobilization. Catch her offline hosting Thoughts Over Tea in her home studio or running along the river with her Sheltie Chuli. And we welcome this extraordinary woman. And I also want to say we are also honoring that June is Pride Month. And while we are recognizing many different things in our country at this time, that's one of the things that we want to be able to also recognize. And I'm going to switch now to my Pride background, which is in San Sebastian during Pride Week last year. So we're going to get that up and welcome Jessica.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you, Carol, for the generous intro. I would like to read here the biographies of these gentlemen that I'm here with, but we wouldn't have time to end talking about their accolades. So I'm gonna invite them individually to speak a little bit about their story. I believe their bios are linked on the website for this panel. so you can see what they're up to in the professional world. But really today in this panel, we just want to speak to all of you guys out there watching either on the recorded version or on this live version. And we really want to have a little bit of a conversation. So the general arc today will touch on 3 main topics. Number 1, we need more people in STEM. We need more people in the STEAM pipeline. And not only more people, we actually want them to be very diverse and first gen and bring these advantages that come with going through what we've all been through and coming from the backgrounds that we're all coming from. So we'll speak a little bit to that conversation from the perspective of our panelists, which are holding 2 alums and 2 current undergraduate students of MIT. And then we'll go into a little bit of, what is hard right now? What are the things that are hardest right now that we can maybe think about in leaving some tips and tricks or some best practices, whether it's we're combating, there's so many things going on in the world right now, and we want to be respectful to that and respectful to the fact that our audience feels these changes in the world, sometimes even more amplified than other communities. And so we want to hold that space for our community members and touch a little bit on some of those repercussions like mental health or self-care and why these practices are so important today. And you'll hear from these fraternity men on why self-care and why looking out for your mental health and balance is important. And then of course, we'll finish with a little bit of the power of community. It's so easy, and we know, especially now that we live in this Zoom world or webinar world, virtual worlds connecting so often, we know that the power of community is still there. So how do we harvest it? What are we looking for when we're shaping our own communities and when we're looking for and finding our tribe? And then of course, it's just the idea of this vision of a leader in the new world, and this as COVID has affected us, and as we walk into this new world, what can that first generation leader look like? What can that minority leader look like and work like and talk like, and how can they manage themselves in that new future that we're building together? So I'll go ahead and I'll say a little bit about me. I'll say my first gen Latina leader story. I think for me it begins that I first heard about MIT sometime in high school, and it was this cute boy in my class that was talking about going there, and I didn't know what he was talking about, but I said, oh my gosh, I'm going there too. What a coincidence. I thought he was talking about the Miami Institute of Technology, which I just figured was around the corner. And instead he was talking about the MIT, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. So sometimes love can lead you in the right direction, right? And many years later, I finally got into MIT. Maybe my first gen story has to include that my dad stopped talking to me for a little bit because he couldn't understand me going away to college. He didn't care what MIT was. He didn't know what MIT was, right? It was just that his little girl was leaving home for college. Imagine that. Imagine the craziness there, right? So finally, actually, these men being on this panel make a lot of sense, because one of the reasons that I chose MIT after meeting a couple of groups that I just didn't really vibe with, I finally came to TDC. Now, TDC those are English letters for what is actually Theta Delta Chi. So it's a Greek organization, as they call it. This is a Greek fraternity on campus of young men that join and they live in this brotherhood. And it was actually the conversations that I had with those young gentlemen here at TDC, and a really great party that we had. It's just really good dancing, really good people, good fun, good times, no alcohol on campus that weekend, of course. And just a great time, good people that actually made me choose MIT. Otherwise it would have been a close call. So I'm very thankful to have had that group of men and community there to teach me what MIT could really be like. And these were the men of TDC. And so these 4 guys share in common that they were all, or are still, part of TDC. And this was wild for me. It's wild for a lot of audiences when I talk to them about being a fraternity at MIT. I didn't know they knew how to party, and we definitely know how to party, right? Work hard, play hard, but we also know how to live in community, and we also know how to help each other through really tough times. So I thought it would be a nice alignment to bring these four gentlemen and to have them speak about the value of that community, whether it was inside TDC or surrounding TDC, and how that's proving to help them through tough times like today as well. So with that, I think we'll just jump right in, and I'll invite, I guess I'll invite Omar to be, I think he's our senior panelist right here. And I'll invite Omar to come in and speak a little bit about his background and his, where he's been and how he sort of got here, and his first gen Latino leader story maybe. And then I'll ask him to chime in with a thought on the following question, which is, how can we create more of a diverse talent pipeline within STEAM or STEM, especially during this time of COVID-19, racial, civil, rioting, and uprising? How can we look at these challenges and think about them so we're geared towards overcoming them and not being stifled or paralyzed by them?
Awesome, thank you. So yeah, I'll start with, I can provide a little bit of background. And ironically enough, actually, I think as I talk about my background, I will be able to answer that question, because I think there's every element that I can think of, which is what's essential to this, I think played a big role in where I am today. So I can start, I mean, I'm also originally born and raised in Puerto Rico. I was there through 18. I actually didn't even know I wanted to study. I was unfortunately in Puerto Rico, I mean, there's good education, but I didn't know what engineering was until I was probably a junior, almost a senior in high school. I had no exposure to anything. I had a very standard curriculum, no options for anything beyond a basic 5 classes that every single person was taking. So I never had opportunities of knowing what else was out there. Which goes to the first point, which I think is important for increasing the talent pipeline, which is having access to education and knowledge. I mean, you hear the comment, knowledge is power. And it's kind of, it's a little, it's funny, like it's not, people use it a lot, but I truly believe it is. Like, until you know what's out there, you really don't know what you might be passionate about or interested in. So you definitely need to have access to that. To me, and actually, a second point, which is once you have access to that, I think having role models and people that you see there and are successful and are able to make it, that's the other element. And I think that's where, in terms of my story, I was so lucky that I had this math teacher that encouraged me daily to join a math team. Again, in school, you have this balance of the social life, the academic life, the stereotypes, right, of like sports is fun, mathletes are, nerdy, or they're not the cool thing to do. I was lucky enough that I didn't let that bother me too much. I took the leap of faith and I entered this environment. And actually through that, I got involved into math Olympics, math competitions. I was fortunate enough that I had good training, good support system, and I was able to win a competition like at a national level. And the reason that is so important is because when I went to a summer camp to practice math, which again sounds super dorky, that's the first time I met a group of people that were 2 to 3 years older than me, and they were all talking about MIT, what this great place it was. And I had, again, no idea what it was, what it meant. But thanks to these people, I'm like, these are fun people. They know how to have fun. I can relate with them. And they're doing this really cool thing, so let me learn more about it. So that's what introduced it to me. I had the fortune and luck, right, of being able to get accepted and have the opportunity to attend. It was a whole nother challenge. No one in my family had left Puerto Rico. That was unheard of. So definitely it was a big transition of having to balance. I want to stay home, but I want to have this access to this great place where I think is going to be great for my future. And again, because at that point, I had access to the good education of background to be able to have that as an option, plus seeing role models of people that are doing it and came from the same place as me and could do it. It allowed me to take that leap of faith. Huge adjustment, obviously, different language. I knew it, but it's very different academic English from having a conversation like this. So that was a whole transition period, which actually again, another pause, which is the third element of increasing the pipeline, is then you need a strong support network. As I think of my entire career, starting as soon as I got into MIT, if it wasn't for my network, my group, and a huge part of it is TDC, like Jessica was mentioning, I would not be here. There's all these times that you run into all the challenges that you don't think are possible. You're like, how am I gonna solve this problem? There's no way I can do this. And you have 3-4 people around you that are gonna like support you. Like if you need to cry, they'll be there with you. If you need help, if you need food, they will get it for you. If you need to have fun, they'll be there to have fun with you, right? So that support system is essential to the success. So being at MIT, I got into engineering. I loved it. I loved the power of understanding how something really works, and then putting it into practice and making great things with it. So I started mechanical engineering, and after when I finished my undergraduate, I definitely wanted to learn more. I felt like it wasn't enough, so I got lucky enough to be able to stay at MIT for 2 more years for a master's of science, and again, great experience. I think there I really learned how to be autonomous, how to think by myself, how to drive a project, how to think about what I care about, what I want to work on. And again, throughout the whole process, having a great support system, not only from classmates, but professors and like people I can look up to, and that they're there to help you through all your struggles. So just to fast forward a little bit, just to wrap up my background, I think from there, actually, thanks to my advisor and my professor, I was able to get a job at Schlumberger in oilfield services, which at the time I was not excited. I'm still not about working in the oilfield industry. However, it gave me the one thing I wanted, which is I wanted the most technical job. I wanted to be able to design my own things, build them, put them together, assemble them, get dirty with oil testing. I love that, and I did that for 5 years. And then eventually, I thought I was then stuck in this stereotype of engineering. And I think also where the network comes in is I had all these friends that worked in different things. And when I compare where I was and where other people were, I knew that I wasn't happy. I felt like I didn't have the level of influence that I wanted to have. And I could see other people having that influence. So I knew it was possible. So actually I had some really good fraternity brothers that were in the consulting area. And I spent countless hours with them trying to talk about it, the pros and the cons. And eventually I decided to take that leap of faith, and I decided to quit engineering. And I started looking into management consulting. And then I was lucky enough to get an opportunity to interview with McKinsey and Company. And that's currently where I am. And again, it's crazy thinking I never thought I could be in a position that now I sit in room with CEOs and CFOs that I've met for 2-3 weeks, and they're listening to my advice or my way of thinking, and that is valued. And something like that you could never, be running around in Puerto Rico with, just in the streets, like not even being able to know what calculus was, to the place that I am, and have that combination of an engineering background, the creative and technical side, with now what I'm learning of business acumen. How do you effectively communicate not only to that very executive level, but how do you communicate to the working level, like all levels of an organization? And that is valuable. You can have the greatest ideas, but if you don't know how to communicate them, you're not going to be able to relay and make the effects that you want. So that's my story, and I can pause there in case anyone wants to add anything on the talent pipeline.
Jess, you got to unmute yourself.
Yeah, I just did. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Omar. That was a thrilling, just imagining you running around Puerto Rico before coming to MIT, when just that great image of joy and hope. And these are such funky times, even everything you shared there could be a moment for anybody to latch onto, because we're all now growing professionally and academically, not from the school walls, but from our bedroom walls, right? And being at home with ourselves and with our family, and sort of experiencing this brand new world to be learning in. So I I feel like there's so many connection points there. I also went into engineering because I wanted to be able to kind of look under the hood, right? Understand why these things were happening the way they were, understand how things worked. Almost like if I could figure out some engine or some like mechanical problem, then I could draw metaphors into the rest of the world. And somehow that would just like make easy sense. And you can apply the same equations to all kinds of social injustice and it would all work out. It's been really hard to apply thermodynamics equations and Bernoulli's equations to mob riots and protests, but I think it's a good effort. I also appreciate the way that Omar is speaking about today's pipeline, and maybe I'm gonna call in Jeff here to go ahead and also speak as someone who's also left MIT. And Jeff's background is definitely worth pointing into relevance here. You know, Jeff has gotten stuck inside wars before. This isn't his first being around social protests. This isn't new to him. And he always seems to, I think, just have this grander view of society, of the world, of like the hardships we're facing right now and how to get your mindset into this next level. Between my partner and I, fondly, we call him the millennial monk. You know, this person that used to be bald for a while, this person that can go around and kind of make sense of these practices from all kinds of community and then string them together and take what you need. So Jeff, I'm gonna invite you to go ahead and speak a little bit here on maybe just giving us some perspective on your vision for leadership for these young aspiring students of color who see themselves in some of us, in yourself, they see themselves in you, for what they could someday become. What is your advice or insight for these young leaders speaking, you know, with the backdrop of Black Lives Matter and pride and social unrest, and we're all virtual, we can't even have these conversations in person sometimes, and how do you begin to think about that vision?
I'm gonna skip my my background and just try to be a little bit more direct, focus on the topics at hand. But times are messy, times are tough, guys. But one of the important things that you do, no matter what, is protect your mindset. Your mindset is key. Your mindset is gold. Your mindset will create the future that you're going to want to be in. And so you can be in a tough situation with everything kind of falling apart around you. But if you are creative, you can think about where you want to be in the next steps. For some context, like I'm a first generation entrepreneur. In my background, I've lived through revolution, lived through some wars, COVID right now, like I'm unemployed and I'm having to rely on the stimulus package, and I'm a company, and my parents are also unemployed. And I live in a 1-bedroom unit with my parents, still trying to like create a company. So what I got, my mindset straight, like just gonna be tough. And if you don't think about the grand picture, create yourself, like if you don't envision yourself in the future, you're not gonna be part of that future. And so Black Lives Matter, equity, and I'm not talking about equity as like a social justice equity. I'm talking about equity as ownership. If people of color, people who are underrepresented, don't have equity, aren't owners, they don't have power, they don't have stake in some of these conversations that are happening all around the world. So for those of you who are in university, you know, power to you. But something that you should have in mind is, how can you go be an owner? How can you shift your mindset from exchanging your time for wages and creating jobs and creating opportunities for other people, and being an owner in something that's the other part of equity that I would encourage you all to think of. And in order to get there, mindset is key. You have to protect yourself, create a vision of the future that you see yourself in. People in the future aren't like yourself.
I appreciate that, Jeff. That's very direct and inspiring. Very, yeah. It's almost like how do you though? You know, how do you keep that mindset together? And I'll open it up to the panelists. What are some strategies to keep your mindset clear or in the right, you know, in the right place? how do you correct for so many things that are going on? This is an open question to all of you.
Hi, I can take that one. So something that I like to do very often is think of a question, where am I and where do I want to be? Because a lot of the times people like us, people of first generation, minorities, people of color, any sort of marginalized community have a lot of history, a lot of stuff that we've gone through. And if we forget about that history that we have, we get lost in our environment. We start to forget that we've gone through so many things to get to where we are, and start thinking that, oh, the people around us are doing amazing and we're not. And so we start blaming ourselves for it. But when you start thinking, oh, I'm here because of all these places that I've been in, then you sort of like ground yourself into a better mindset. And then the second part of the question, where do I want to be, is another like introspective type of question of like, that kind of brings forth goal setting, right? Am I trying to go to get a job? Am I trying to get to college? Am I trying to do X, Y? When you keep that in mind, you sort of focus what you're doing, even if it's to a very tangential degree. You focus what you're doing on those things, and you prevent other things from distracting you as much. Obviously, there's like a lot of things that are, it's impossible to keep them from like getting to you. But as long as you keep where you want to go in the back of your mind, in those free times, or even when you're like about to fall asleep, you think about that goal, and that kind of adds a little bit of fuel to your goal and to your mental state.
Yeah, no doubt. Reframing is actually such a powerful tool. And for so many years, I just discounted it as like, oh, it's just a different question, but the issue still stands, you know, but I kind of couldn't let myself see that by asking it in a different way, you really do see a different issue from that different perspective. So like, you have to like, just lean into it and trust that something will change. And that's kind of what lets the thing change. And so it's like this like back and forth or catch-22 that I caught myself in. So yeah, thank you for sharing that, Pedro. That's a powerful strategy. You guys have any other strategy you'd like to share or think about as you're maybe imagining yourself as this vision of a leader, or as you imagine your friends around you as leaders? How this concept of a mindset shift or mindset management, should be an MBA for that, mindset business administration, mindset management and administration.
You know, I just want to inject one thing, that you also have a lot of power in your institutions of higher learning. So you all are graduates of MIT, and what standards does MIT need to be performing at to help first gen to college, to help people of color, to help people who don't have all these connections? You also have the power not only to hold your businesses or VCs or the kinds of things, you know, place like McKinsey, but also institutions of higher learning. And I think that's something that students need to really be aware that they have that influence and they have that power, and they should use it, and they can use it. So I just want to encourage you all to just think about that and how that can be helping right now at a time when really old structures that we don't need anymore because they don't function well are really falling away. And what can we ask for in the new structures that work for everybody?
Yeah, absolutely, Carol. Thank you. I know that at MIT, I can't remember Jose and Pedro as current students, if you guys are currently involved in too much stuff with the administration or with the actual sort of higher ups. Are you engaging with them in many ways, or?
So Jose and I were actually just recently in a meeting with our former major department. Basically, our department is trying to look at the ways in which they can generate institutional change toward diversity and equality among people of color. So in this sort of group meeting that we had, we like tried to give them ideas for exactly that. How do we increase diversity in talent pipelines? But it was more in an academic setting. So instead of hiring employees, you're thinking about how do we get academics to come do research here in a more like diverse mindset.
I love that. I appreciate that. Thank you guys for legitimately walking the talk. You know, you're not just coming onto this panel, you're also literally doing the work behind the scenes to even things out. That's been so powerful for me to find ways to be able to do that once you know, because it's not like once you get to some university or college, you're done, you know? You still want to pull in more people because we still need more people in the pipeline. So it's almost like the work is never done, but if you figure out the right people to be doing it with, it's certainly an enjoyable task. So I'm so glad that you guys are working on that together. See, Carol, I told you they were awesome. They're even more awesome than I knew. That's amazing. That's great. So then let's move on a little bit and kind of, oh boy. Oh boy. Oh boy. You guys still there? Can you still hear me? That was amazing. My computer went like on sleep mode, but only the outside projector. Anyway, that was weird. So this next part that I want to bring us to this question is about, you know, a lot of the, you know, even just that, you guys together are already from the same community, and together you're working on these things within the institution, right? So community does a lot for us. It helps us give back in different ways. It allows us to learn about ourselves, maybe through learning about others, right? These connections, sometimes they're replacing, I love when they call it a brotherhood, because in this house, at least, that energy is palpable. That energy, whether it's it's just the sibling energy of being able to tell you something directly and knowing that this person has the right intentions in mind for you, right? And because of that, you can stretch into some growth. So I think I'll ask Pedro some of this question too. Pedro, please, to share a little bit about your background, maybe at least the first generation leader kind of drama that that might be relatable for some of our audiences. And then, you know, talk about this brotherhood that we're, first of all, I don't know if it was trippy to you, but I can't figure out how to explain to my parents like a sisterhood or a brotherhood. They're like, you have one sister, what are you talking about? You know, and what is, and this idea of like, maybe the Latino culture, maybe the minority culture is so intense about who was in your family that to begin to call someone that you just met suddenly family, maybe that was a shared experience with you, I'm not sure. But you are part of this lineage of men now, that, you know, Theta Delta Chi fraternity at MIT. How has this experience of living with this tribe, with this community, away at college helped shape you during these college years? And for the alums, you know, even after these college years, how, you know, what part of this community has endured? What would you, I think the goal here is that we're not recruiting here for any kind of fraternity or anybody to join anything once they go to college. We're just hoping to open your minds to the kinds of community and what kinds of things you should be looking for when you're creating your own community. That might be the marching bands, that might be random friends that you live with on Craigslist, you know, but what about those aspects are so important? So what would you advise these younger students as they look to build their communities of support and as they manage the advantages and disadvantages that come with living in a space so tightly together? And I guess now that we're all home for so much of this learning experience, feel free to draw on what it could look like from your actual family and still living at home as well. Pedro, that was a lot, but over to you, buddy.
Yeah, so I guess I can start off by saying a kind of cliche statement that says you are an average of the 5 closest people that you are with. And I think it's something that I've sort of listened to in the past couple of years. And it's made me more aware of who I hang out with and who I want to be in my immediate circles. But now I want to talk a little bit about my history. So I was born in Bogota, Colombia. I came to the US at the age of 9. My path to where I am now was pretty, was very like not straight. I had to, like I didn't have many people close to me. I'm first generation. I had no mentors. I had very few people to look up to growing up. And so the thing that I want you all to get from my story is that you don't need mentors. You don't need like an example of what to do something, because if you have the desire to do something and you're persistent in your efforts to attaining this goal, a lot of the times things will work out in your favor. So I think a lot of the time thinking that I'm not gonna do something is enough for me to fail, like without even starting. So I guess the first big change in my life was losing my parents at the age of 10. It was a really tough moment because I had just come to the US. I was around 9 or 10. And after that happened, I moved in with my grandparents, and I was forced to kind of restart my life and basically how I encounter problems, because I was very much dependent on them. I was like, they were the closest people that I had. And so after that, I had to like change my mindset and start thinking about things differently. But yeah, then after that, after moving to the US, the thing that most like encouraged me to try hard in school was what people told me in the very beginning. So I came to the US when at the end of 3rd grade in Colombia, but still in the middle of 3rd grade here in the US. So when I came, I had just finished 3rd grade in Colombia, but I was like way ahead of my peers here because I had already finished the 3rd grade. And so people told me in the very beginning that I was very smart and that I was going to do great things, but it was because of getting ahead in Colombia that people were telling me this. And so, so then after that, I fast forward a couple years, I still had the mindset of, oh, I have to try hard in school, or no, I'm smart. I can do great things. And so in my high school, I pursued a program called MITES. It's so the way I found this program was just Google searches and trying to see where, like, how I could leave the system. So I was kind of trapped because for so many years I went to school in Colombia. Like everyone around me stayed in one place and didn't really go anywhere. And then I came to the US into a public high school where the same thing happened. Everyone went to school, everyone went to the same community college or state school, and nobody really left that circle. And so what I was focused in was leaving that circle. So that's kind of what I had in mind from the very beginning of like, oh, I need to leave the circle. But because nobody around me had done that, I had to be very persistent and had to be kind of clever to find ways of leaving that circle. So the way I left the circle was through this program. It was a program the summer between my junior year and senior year at MIT. And that like introduced me to a lot of people and a lot of resources that I didn't have previously. And that really motivated me to achieve even harder, even higher. So after that, so if it wasn't for this program, I would not have applied, or I would not have like done a lot of the things that I did to come to MIT. But it was because of the mindset of leaving the the public system and Columbia and like the circle that I was like bound to stay in. It was because of that mindset that I was able to find these like alternative paths. And it was hard because nobody at my school like knew about like applying to like difficult schools. I applied through this program called QuestBridge, which if there's any high schoolers watching this, I hope after this you Google it. It's a great program that helps people of marginalized communities apply to college, and it guarantees substantial scholarships if you get in through QuestBridge. Yeah, so I found MITES and I found QuestBridge, and so I was able to pave the way to MIT. Obviously, I definitely didn't do it alone. If it wasn't for people, I wouldn't be here. But if it wasn't for that mindset that I had from the beginning, I would not have found the people that helped me get to where I am. And so like, I guess that's like my main point, that if you like set a goal, you're persistent and you don't get bogged down into like where it is that you are right now, like you can achieve like a surprising amount of things with what you have. And I guess to address the community question, I can tie it back to what I said in the beginning, in which you're an average of the 5 closest people that you're with. I don't know if there's any scientific evidence, but in my case, so what I can tell you is that stress is like almost unavoidable in college. No matter what you study, no matter where you go, you're going to be in situations where you're either stressed about academics, about social things, about jobs, whatever. And stress does like a very bad thing to your brain, which is obscure your decision-making skills. So when you're in stress, you don't think as clearly, and sometimes you don't make the best decisions. So it's up to you to surround yourself with a supportive community that will be there for you in those moments of stress when you're not able to make the best decisions or you're sad or whatever. Because in those moments, you can't rely on that mindset. You can't rely on whatever it is that is in here. You kind of have to sit back and kind of fall back on your support network. And it's something that like nobody should be ashamed of. It's something that we all need. And it's also something that we all need to provide for those of us around us. So it's kind of like the saying, like be a faucet, not a sink. Like don't just like the nice thing about being part of support networks is that you're not only supported by people, but you also support people yourself. And so it's a very gratifying thing to be a part of, because you like experience people at their worst and they experience you at your worst. So. But yeah, takeaways, community is important. And you can do a lot of things if you set your mind to it.
That was quite the cue up, Pedro. I felt like you were like alley-ooping yourself there with the stories and the like, and that's why that's right. And then here's a figure, some story, and then that's why that earlier thing is right too. And I really appreciated the weaving together. Some people are saying, okay, I love that. I love that. There was so many places to go with that. I know that Jose has a lot to respond to as well for living in this community world. And I appreciate, Pedro, the way that you're talking about specifically like community as this, like, first of all, the sink versus the faucet, being a faucet, right? The channel to flow, to provide, versus the sink and just holding things up, just like this container. And then being a product or an average of the people around you. Jose, you're gonna have to come up with some good metaphors too. I hope you have some good rules of thumb. I'm curious for this community part, Jose, how you have seen, you know, is it true what Pedro is saying? And since you both are undergrads and students currently at TDC, what, does it really work that way? Is it true that, you know, you get what you get out of it what you put into it, or does it multiply? Is it really true about being able to be there for others and simultaneously that helping you just by being present for someone else, being able to help yourself in a way? Could you unpack that a little bit? And then I'll also ask you to tag on this idea of something we mentioned earlier, sort of mental health or self-care. And again, referring to the way that we can help our minds be stable and our minds stay grounded and keep presence and keep balanced even in the face of atrocities. And even it doesn't mean that we can't be emotional and that we can't even purge ourselves of some emotion, but there's something there about being in control of those emotions and starting to have these conversations. And I know that these topics might be new to some of our high school audiences. I won't make judgments on assuming where you are, but I know that I worked in an independent school outside of Boston. And when you're in a private school or an independent school, from very early on in your childhood education, we are talking about social emotional learning techniques and practices to really help the individual, the student, be able to manage these emotions in a social space and in a wise way. So definitely there's this arc that we know that investing in this at early childhood education makes a really big difference when you're going to be the CEO and 45 of some big company, right? So I'll invite the alums to speak to us. I'll invite Jose to speak to us, maybe as a current student, and take it from there. Go ahead.
Right. Well, I guess I'll start off with an intro and just build up to my answer. So my name is Jose. I am a Mexican-American first-gen student at MIT studying chemistry and biology. I guess my story begins in middle school. I went to a public pilot school. So it was a new sort of curriculum that they were developing. It was the K through 12. And I think from the very beginning, my family drove this idea of you have to go to college, this phrase of ponte la pilas, you need to always be on it. They knew the idea of college, but they didn't never knew how to get there, how to pay for it, what the process is. So I was very fortunate enough that I went to a school that had this sort of program that similar to this pipeline that supported students of my background, low income, first generation students, and helping them sort of get to college. And I guess through that process, I was able to learn more of what it means to outside of the scope of California. I initially only knew about state schools and community colleges, and I was very content with going to one of those. But it wasn't until I was part of this program that I knew more about what the other options are. And similar to Pedro, I didn't know about MIT until later on in my high school career. I was just being very optimistic. I was I want to do some sort of STEM engineering field, and I was just let me just shoot my shot and apply to MIT. I think one of the key things that I was looking for in a college was what the community was like. In my case, it was during high school, and I was still coming out to my friends, my close friends, but I wasn't still out to my parents. So it wasn't one of the things I was looking for is finding a community where I can sort of explore my identity, what it means, who am I in terms of those sort of aspects. And I came upon MIT, it was an open sort of campus, and I felt very comfortable. And it was very interesting because when you think TDC, a fraternity, you normally think of it as a heteronormative institution, and it was very interesting that this was the first sort of environment that I decided to come out to this group of individuals, mostly because those individuals were very, very open and warm to me, so I felt very comfortable in exploring that sort of identity and sharing that part of me with them. So it was very nerve-wracking, but it was also very important because the sort of community was one of the things that was supporting me throughout my 3 years so far at MIT. Just being very comfortable in seeing who I am, answering that question, who am I? And then I guess going on into the topic of mental stress, I think one of the key problems that first generation students tackle when they get into colleges or when they even get to campus is this topic of the imposter syndrome. Did I have the right to be accepted here? Do I belong here? Can I make it? And it's a struggle because it's not something that you really feel comfortable talking to, because everyone around you seems very like calm and like they have their sort of handle on this situation, and you just feel like you're an outsider. And it wasn't until like you start talking to other people and like people of like similar backgrounds to me, first generation students or just Hispanic students in general, that like you feel like the like, quiescence, being very calm, because like it's a struggle that we can get through together. And another sort of issue is this idea of like, or like this mindset of like always being on the grind. Like you have to always be productive. Like every single moment you have to be doing something. Even if you give yourself this sort of break, you just like start like bullying yourself, because you're like, why are you doing this? You have other sort of things. You have X, Y, and Z to work on. And that's like such a like detrimental mindset to have, because like there's this thing of like burning out. You just like, you pile on too much on yourself that you just like sometimes just don't even feel passionate anymore about what you're doing. So this idea of like mental health, or just like just taking care of yourself and like who you are. I think one of the key things that I learned is that like you have to make time for like just like even the smallest things that you're interested in. I think at MIT, one of the great things is that yes, you're like an engineer or a scientist or whatever, but you're also open to explore different avenues, be it music, be it sports or whatever. For me, in my case, it was dance. Prior to MIT, I didn't do any sort of like dancing, but at MIT, I was able to explore it, and then I was able to like join different like dance groups and sort of be a part of that. So that was my sort of way of giving myself this break, because yes, MIT is very difficult, but if I don't take care of myself, then I'm just going to be drowning in like this sort of work, and it's just very, it becomes a cycle.
Like breathing deeply with you, because I get that, and that so much of that relates to me and resonates. I appreciate you saying that openly like that, Jose, and of course bringing in your identity to this panel. I appreciate it. These are just conversations that need to be had in these circles, and I think that's exactly the point, right? It's figuring out who can we surround ourselves with so that we can have these difficult conversations. Because I think it was too easy for me early on. I thought it was too easy to be fooled that people weren't having these conversations. And it turns out that we just weren't talking about them as openly and publicly as in my family, in my Cuban culture, where everybody knows everybody's business. And so I thought that at some point you just got to this, level, this age, and you never shared again. And it turns out that there's definitely spaces for this to happen. I've enjoyed looking back on history and realizing what moments they were using for reflection or for intention. Maybe when they were going on walks, when the women were having high tea at 4 p.m. in the day, and these moments that they were curating to really come together with intention. And I think in the times that we're living, and it sounds like you're speaking a little bit to this, intention is so important. Like, we have only 24 hours in the day. We could get sucked into a Twitter hole or an Instagram black hole, or so many black holes around us, but keeping our intention sort of clear and intact is so important. So thank you for sharing that. I appreciate the way you laid that out for us.
I'd like to add something if I add to that.
You know what, Jeff, you're breaking up again. Why don't we try the no video so we can get your sound at least as clear coming through as possible, because it went ahead and it's fine until you start talking, and then the computer wants to focus on your face. Yes.
This time, perfect. Something I'll try and say about the self-care is that I think first generation underserved and underprivileged communities oftentimes carry around a lot of stress. We have a higher stress level, a higher level of responsibility, and maybe certain stressors because of our environment or lack of resources that are around us. And so as we go into these challenging schools, challenging environments, high performance environments, we don't often think about stress that we bring along just because of who we are and what the cards were that we were dealt. But in that context, one of the things that has helped me through my journey, because I'm, as an entrepreneur, life is already with life is already uncertain as an entrepreneur. You're trying to create something out of nothing. I find myself very stressed out a lot of times, but I try to a cognitive model of behaviors are not emotion, or behaviors or emotions are not thoughts, and my thoughts are not me. So you can cry, and that's a behavior. It is not your emotion. Your sadness is your emotion that is caused by some thoughts that make you sad, and they're all not who you are as a person. So sometimes as an individual, we don't have the wherewithal or someone who's explained this to us, that like, it's okay to think certain thoughts, have things, and express certain behaviors, but at the end of the day, that is not your identity. That is not you as a human. I'm waking up sad. I lost a, don't know if you can. How's the audio?
You broke up for a second. You're about to say you wake up or something like this?
So if I wake up feeling sad because I I didn't sell a deal, or because someone passed away, I might then go ahead and cry. But all of those things can be unlinked. And so that maybe that's just a cognitive model for everyone to think of, like, as you are generation students, you are a demographic that innately carries around more stress. It might be a useful way to frame the difference, the different components of self-care.
I'm typing in here, Jeff, that to Google cognitive behavioral theory. Is that a good way to get to what you're talking about more?
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful. Yeah, so CBT, I've also been introduced to this, and it really is about the framing. So thank you, Jeff, for bringing that up. Again, with that mindset, right? That mindset shift. Maybe there's a relevant moment here to share is this is an Auschwitz, so a Holocaust survivor, and he's a psychologist, and his name is Czech and wonderful, and escapes me right now, but he says there's this one moment of power that is freedom that can never be taken from someone, which is that moment in between something that has happened to them and how they react moving forward. So that little moment of freedom is something that can never be taken away from an individual. And there's something so powerful about harnessing what we can do and how we see the world in that split window of time.
I think it might be Viktor Frankl, but it could be somebody else.
Viktor Frankl, yes, Viktor Frankl. No, it totally is. It totally is.
And I want to also just put another insert that there was a guy, a professor at Princeton for years named John Darley, and he did all this research on self-fulfilling prophecy and so much about the ways in which you see yourself overcoming the current strife, the current difficulty, whatever it is what ends up happening for you. And I think being able to show people how much that's a choice, as all of you have indicated today, it's really powerful for people who can feel that the circumstances of what's going on with Black Lives Matter or unemployment or whatever challenges are in the current moment seem ineffable, but there are these choices where you can really choose to have the mental wherewithal. In the Korean culture, they call it the indomitable spirit. And that's something everyone can really harness that.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Carol, do you think we have time for, I was going to open up the floor for these panelists to just finish with one last statement, I'm just inviting you guys to come in with one last thought, one last thing that might ring through these, through the minds of this audience. So I'm going to invite you guys to come in a second. And in the meantime, or right before that, I'll go ahead and I'll answer Angela DeHart's question, speaking about where the girls at. And I appreciate that question, Angela, I really do. Usually that's totally my kind of question to ask as well. And so what I did here is actually an intentional focus on this little slice of first generation students inside a community that was near and dear to me, called TDC. And so I thought I would honor how that shows up with that central spine across the four. But please know that, giving women the stage is actually really important, just because we've been so behind the scenes so much. In fact, MIT does have 50%, about 50% women. It's been like that since the 90s. So I appreciate you putting the people on stage as they should be represented. So thank you for that. So gentlemen, with a one sentence or one liner that we might leave with these guys with today, How about we start in the order that we went? How about Omar? Go ahead.
Yeah, I think honestly, and thanks again to everyone for sharing. That's also very inspiring for myself. I think my thought for everyone to take away is I think that vulnerability is very powerful. And I think that the power of having a community and being vulnerable with them is going to allow you to recharge in many ways. It's going to allow you to refocus when you have to. I mean, we all have the stresses, we all have the challenging times, and it is okay to open up and many times rely on people. No one can do it alone. So just don't try to do it alone because you don't have to.
Appreciate that. I appreciate that. Jeff, I think it's over to you, hon, for that one-liner for close.
I'll try and keep it brief. If you don't find anyone else like you at the table, forget the table, build your own. Just like, so it's, if you don't see people in the system around you, forget it, build your own. That's what we need.
Absolutely.
Mic drop.
Yes. I have thought of 3D printing very small mics to give it to people at webinars so they can just individually mic drop wherever they are. Pedro, what can you leave us with? What's this last insight?
I want to say that books, internet, magazines will never teach you as much as people. Like people will always teach you a lot more than books, magazines, internet, whatever.
I appreciate that. I super appreciate that. And when you have someone's time, it's really just the most valuable thing. I get so frustrated when so many, it seems like, I think to the older generations, it seems like these younger generations are like too quick to be in their phones and not spending valuable time when they're with someone. So I'm just being mindful of everything that we could be getting from someone's presence. So wonderful. Thank you, Pedro. Thank you. And Jose, last but definitely not least.
I guess my last thing is a call to action to all like first gen POCs out there, just to be very like open about their achievements, because in these trying times, like I think we're looking for role models, and I think just hearing all these like inspirational stories would just be very beneficial now.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think I'm just blessed to have this community of people to surround myself with, and I appreciate you all and taking the time today to come here and speak to some first-gen high schoolers and speak to, you can find us all on LinkedIn if you ever have kinds of questions to follow up with the panelists. And I know that they're an excellent group of people just trying to push the needle forward. So thank you for this opportunity. I'm so happy to be able to serve and bring you all together. And I guess I'll pass it over to you, Carol.
I just want to say that if every college freshman, whether they were first gen or not, could spend this hour with you all, I think they could do anything, because I think you have so authentically captured what so many people go through, have shame about, can't give voice to, can't get help with. And we're all human, and we all have different things that we struggle with. And I think the more we recognize and embrace our humanity, and leaders like you are able to be authentic with sharing that, we can heal the world. But right now, the world, and especially the United States, has so many multiple levels of sickness. And part of it is, you know, the kinds of things that you all have really courageously worked through. Not that you don't have these issues, not that you don't have stress, that you don't struggle with your own mental health issues, other kinds of pressures, family pressures, money pressures, but you're able to be real about what those things are and support each other in a community of trust and not have to be a perfect person. And I think the more we can give first gen to college students who are, you know, maybe coming to an environment where they see people with a lot more wealth and a lot more means, you know, that support, that actually that is your strength. You know, not having that stuff and doing the incredible things you guys are doing, those are your superpowers. And I'm just here to say, like, throughout your life, throughout your starting a company, you start a foundation, you become a captain of industry, you are going to draw from that the rest of your life, personally and professionally. So I'm just really proud to know you all. I'm proud to support you guys. And I want to also share with you that GlobalMindED has something that we've been talking about with Jessica, and it's called the Bold Goal. And our vision, because we want to really achieve impact at scale, is to partner with MIT and to have MIT be our PI on an NSF grant. And we want to algorithmically connect 25 million first generation to college students, those who work with them, and those who want to hire them, to role models, mentors, internships, and jobs. And we believe that that's a powerful way, like an eHarmony for first gen to college, for people to match on 3 or 4 or 5 kinds of things that they might have in common. Like maybe Jose from the same place in Mexico you came from, you put that into this and you find a mentor who's out working at some company who's from that same town. And maybe that person is also LGBTQ. Like those are things that we can be sourcing through with technology so that we can emphasize the human relationships that we need to really connect and be the people that we're capable of becoming. So I just want to say that, Celeste and I were very fortunate last Friday and Saturday to spend the time with our first gen leaders class of 2020. And I just want to say, between that experience with them and spending time with you all and Jessica today, you really realize like anything is possible, but the people in midlife, like I'm 57, we have to get out of the way and clear the path, because you guys are the ones who can knit together the bigger solutions and show people how to lead authentically, how to lead boldly, how to really heal the transgressions of our past, in this nation, in the world. And I'm just so delighted. And I just have to say that this Angela who's in here, Angela, thank you so much for your incredible insights. And then Franny's on here. Aw, she said it filled her heart too. I just want to say, for you all who are educators, if you can widely share this, and we're going to share it through our newsletter, I really believe that there is something so special within each of you that the world needs right now, and we have to all work together to get this message out. So this is just the beginning. Jessica will tell you, I will temper myself from reaching out to you guys, but you're going to be part of us over time. I just want you guys to know that, because we're a community that can support your dreams and goals in a big, big way. And you need several communities. You need your MIT, you need your Theta Delta Chi community, you need your GlobalMindED, there's a number of communities that allow us to do different things in the world. So thank you so much, Jessica, for putting together these incredible people, and so delighted that we were all able to get to know you all. And we're looking forward to changing the world with you, and so grateful for the opportunity to spend the last hour with you guys. Thank you.
Definitely thankful for this panel to come out. Couldn't have done it without them. So I'm appreciating them for showing up and being so wonderful.
Yeah. All right, you guys, all the best. And we're going to go forward and change the world. Thank you so much for being such inclusive leaders. We so appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
Bye-bye.